So check out how Amazon sent this to me. The battery charger's in a bag, and they put that bag inside this bag. Just a bag, no box. Just a bag flopping around in the delivery van. Well, let's find out if it was damaged in shipping or not. So I've just about had it with modern battery chargers. Do you see that? You get a little bit of a flicker of something, and then it does nothing for you. Now, this is actually a decent battery charger. It puts out a good amount of amps, and it charges up batteries just fine. But it can't charge a battery if the battery is fully discharged, because it has silly nanny safeties in it. Well, folks like you and me are sophisticated enthusiasts. We don't need to be babied. We're okay with taking the risk of blowing our face off charging a battery that shouldn't be charged. We just want the dang thing to work. So perhaps this is the solution. This is the Outerman Intelligent Pulse Repair Charger, model MF-2B. And I think this is kind of interesting. It can charge lithium batteries or ordinary batteries, and supposedly it automatically detects between 12 volts and 24 volts. And I guess it automatically detects your input too, whether you're on 110 or 250. Now what you see here is what the little thing came with. There was absolutely no instructions provided with this guy. And we can see we have a little bit of damage from shipping. They just shipped this thing in a bag, not a box. So of course, it's been beat to hell. Now, I think the most important feature though is, of course, it has an automatic scum method, just like this thing is permanently in scum, but it has a manual toggle. Now, that's what I'm really interested in. Because you know, if you go out in your junkyard and you try to turn over a car whose battery has been fully discharged, the automatic mode is not going to cut it. You need to give it full chooch to actually get the battery to come back to life. And one of the things that I think is kind of odd about this is it's really light, like scary light, under 2 pounds. You know, this thing is probably a good, like, I don't know, 10 pounds or something. It obviously has a nice big transformer in it. This thing, I bet you it doesn't even have a transformer at all. It's probably using a switch mode power supply in here, which, I don't know, that isn't really the best thing to use with a battery charger, but if you have the correct control circuitry in there as well, it could actually be pretty good. So let's try this thing out. So right off the bat, I noticed the leads on this thing are kind of short. It's what is that, like 2 feet? That's a little ridiculous. And I set it on ordinary battery and automatic. We'll see what happens on automatic. But it's kind of interesting. It's showing the no load voltage at 16.7 volt. And it also has a little amp meter, which of course is not showing any amps. Now 16.7, if it's actually going to try to charge at that, that's a little bit on the high side. A normal charge is 14.7 and a reconditioning charge would be like 15.8. We can also test and see if it's actually putting out voltage without even being connected. So let's do that real quick. You know, those smart chargers, they don't put out any voltage until you actually connect it to the battery. And hey, look at that. It's putting out 16.3 volts and it's in automatic mode. Kind of interesting. And like I was saying, this thing doesn't have any instructions whatsoever. So I was actually assuming that it wouldn't energize the clamps on automatic unless it was detecting a voltage across, but you know, hey, there you go. Switching it over to manual mode doesn't appear to make any changes. Oh, I spoke too soon. On manual, it dropped the voltage down to 14.4. Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. See, 14.4 is more of a normal charge. I guess in automatic it thinks you're trying to recondition the battery when there's no load across it. Kind of interesting. And on my cheap little meter here, it's reading 14.1, but you know, who knows to say which one is accurate. They're both cheap pieces of crap. Now that's set on ordinary battery, which is, you know, a flooded lead acid battery. Let's flip it to lithium battery. And you see on lithium battery, it changes the charge to 12.6, and it's probably going to be the same on automatic for lithium. Interesting. Flip it back over to ordinary battery. Now one thing I am curious about is this intelligent pulse repair charger nonsense. Now sending pulses to a battery isn't necessarily detrimental, but it can be if it's not done correctly. You never want the pulses to drop below, say, like 12.6, 12.7, something like that, because if it does, then you're actually getting some reversion like in your charge. I wonder if we can actually see what that pulse is doing. Okay, I finally got the oscilloscope dialed in here, and you can see that there is indeed some ripple going on, or perhaps even some intentional pulses, but the pulse variation is only about 1 volt. You see on the scale here, it has the peak max at 1.57 above reference, and the min is 0.5, so it's only about a volt of fluctuation. Now if this thing is currently putting out 14.3 volts, that means it's dropping down to about 13.3 whenever it comes down to the valley and pulses back up. So that's actually not too bad. That's not going to be bad for the battery. Let me flip it back on automatic here, see if that changes anything. And we're still seeing the same thing on automatic. So it seems like it has this ripple or pulse, if it's intentional, no matter what. So I think this is acceptable. A really nice battery charger would have like a nice steady even voltage, but this is okay. I mean, this thing was less than 20 bucks, which is kind of rare for a battery charger, right? Now let's get this thing actually hooked up to the battery and see what it does. Now this is kind of interesting. It's not showing that it's putting out any amps at all. However, it is still putting out that 16 volt. It could be that this battery is not going to accept any kind of charge whatsoever. So let's flip it over into manual and see what happens. All right, well this battery might just be too far gone for this little thing to handle. Maybe it isn't so great for maybe reconditioning batteries, but let's grab another battery and see what it'll do on a different one. So this battery I know is good. It's just been chronically neglected and undercharged. So we'll see if this little guy can charge it back up. And I want to reiterate how comically short the leads are on this thing. Woo! It's not even plugged in. It sparks whenever you connect the battery. That's kind of funny. Plug it in and see what happens. Oh, here we go. We have some sort of charging indicator lighting up now. That's not good. The display seems to be not working now. Let's reset and see what happens. Okay, after unplugging it and plugging it back in, our display is working again. So I would suggest not hooking it up to a battery before plugging it in. Plug it into the wall first and then connect it to the battery. I don't know what that was about, but let's hook it up to the battery. Oh, very cool. Hope you can see on the screen here. It's showing it's charging at 9 amps, which is nice, and the current voltage is 13.9, and this charging indicator is going bananas. Like, I don't know what the purple, blue, green, red, yellow flashing is. It would be helpful if this thing had some instructions, told us what that actually meant. Now let's flip it over onto manual, see if there's any kind of difference here. Yeah, I'm not seeing any kind of difference between automatic and manual, at least on this battery, like right off the bat. But I think my number one complaint of the smart chargers is how if the battery's too low, it won't start the charge at all. This thing starts the charge even when batteries are low, so that's a good sign. All right, so I've had the charger connected to this battery now for maybe around like 30 minutes or so, and you can see the amperage has fallen down to 6.5 ish, and it was just showing 14 volts, but it's dropped back down to 13.9. That does indicate that it is charging the battery, so that's good. Now I would like it to see still pumping out 9 amp, especially since it's not coming up to full voltage yet. I mean, according to the Amazon ad, this thing should be pumping out 10 amp, but the highest I saw was 9. I'm guessing 9 is the max, and it's probably more like a 6.5 amp charger. Now we can try and see if it actually is putting out 6 amps. So watch our little meter down here. Yeah, look at that, 6 amps. All right, so it's been on this battery for about 2 hours, maybe 2.5, give or take. And I've been keeping an eye on it, and it's basically been putting out between 6 and 6.5 amps this entire time. I'd prefer to see this amp a little bit more stable, because batteries tend to like a constant current on charge, but you know, it's pretty close. But as you can see, the voltage has come up to 15 volts now, whereas before we were like, what was it, 13.6 or 13.8. Now I do have it on automatic, which is supposed to turn off in automatic mode whenever it gets to full charge. I feel like it probably should have turned off at 14.7, because that's actually full charge for the battery. But I don't know, maybe it just always goes for a reconditioning charge. I'm not really sure. I don't think this thing is smart enough to know if a battery needs reconditioning or not, even though I'm pretty sure this battery kind of does. I mean, it's been chronically undercharged for its entire life, more or less. And as you can see, it's pretty darn old. But I am glad to see the current has been relatively stable and the voltage is coming up. That's kind of how you want your battery charger to work. So as you can see, it's up to 15.1 volts now. I'll keep an eye on it and see when it turns off. All right, so this thing has been on the charge for about 5.5 hours now. And as you can see, it's come up to 15.7, but it's still running at the 6 amps. I have it in automatic mode. You know, it's supposed to turn off at some point in automatic. I wonder what kind of voltage it actually comes up to before it turns off. A little strange. And coming up to 15.7 is okay-ish, but if it was actually doing some sort of intelligent sulfation repair or reconditioning or something like that, you would actually expect the amperage to be dropping down to like 2 amps or something. But I don't really think it's stressing the battery out all that much. The battery is a little warm. Oh yeah, it's 100 degrees and the ambient temp in here is 84, so it's definitely on heating up the battery a little bit. The charger itself is just barely warm, so the charger isn't being stressed out. Thing runs pretty efficiently, I guess. So yeah, I don't know how good this automatic mode is. I think it'd probably just be better to assume it's only a manual battery charger, and you're just gonna want to keep an eye on it. And when you get up to the voltage that you want to be at, you should just go ahead and disconnect it. So how about we maybe take this thing apart and see what it looks like inside. I mean, it's nice that it has this fan. I also want to point out that this thing actually feels like nice and cool. It's not overheating. I guess this little fan in the back really works to keep this thing cool. All my other battery chargers will heat up a lot. So I guess that's one very nice feature about this little guy, is it's not even getting warm. Kind of awesome. Before I unplug it, I'm going to disconnect it from the battery, because we learned earlier that it does not like being connected to the battery without being plugged into the wall. I'm going to short these leads together just in case there's an output capacitor in there. Looks like the metal case is held on by screws on either side. We'll take those off. All right, well, look at that adorable tiny little transformer. Now, you know, it is just barely warm. But yeah, there's not a whole lot going on in here. It looks like the LCD display has more circuitry than the actual power supply itself. Now, this is freaking hilarious. It has a grounded plug on it, but if you take a look at the wire that coming into it, the little green grounding wire is just clipped off. Now, why couldn't they have just screwed that onto the case to actually make it actually grounded? Oh, those bastards. Ah, and this is funny too. Look at this. This is a little piezo speaker for warning. It still has a little protection sticker on there. It even says remove seal after washing. I don't know, that might not be a good indicator of attention to detail here, huh? You know, this guy right here I think is like a thermal resistor for, you know, temperature protection. Nice big capacitor for smoothing the output. This is probably the rectifier right there. Of course, that looks kind of like it might be a rectifier too. All right, so I was able to grab some numbers and look up what these guys are. This is a Schottky diode right here, and this is a little solid state relay, just basically a MOSFET. And then this guy is a big power MOSFET over here. And this tiny little thing right here is an optocoupler. Now, I would assume this is isolating maybe this guy from the mains, but since it's over here, it's probably isolating this one from the mains. You know, I don't really know. And I couldn't see what this little chip is in here, so I don't know what this guy is doing. But, you know, obviously this is just a switch mode power supply. But hey, you know, like I was saying, it was under 20 bucks. I think after the discounts and everything, I think I got it for like $18.99 or something like that. It's kind of hard to beat a 6 amp-ish, 9 amp-ish battery charger for under 20 bucks, you know. And actually, like, one of my favorite things is that as soon as you hook it up, it's charging, you know, it's outputting voltage. It's not like those quote-unquote safety chargers that won't even output voltage if it doesn't detect voltage already across the leads. So hey, you know, I don't know, I think this thing's pretty good. I think I might actually take this grounding wire and ground it to the chassis, and I think I'll also put some longer leads on this thing, because that's just kind of ridiculous how short these things are. But other than that, I'm happy with this guy. I think it's a pretty good value. And if you want to get it for yourself, there's a link for it down in the description below. Hey, if you aren't subscribed already, why don't you think about hitting that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up too. It really helps the channel out. Thanks for watching.